It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of bright, ordinary Colorado morning when the sunlight spills in through the kitchen window just right, catching the edge of the marble countertop. I had my usual routine laid out like clockwork. Coffee brewed. I was folding the newspaper, reaching for my toast, when Lana leaned against the fridge with that practiced, unreadable expression of hers. "I'm leaving," she said, like she was mentioning a dry-cleaning pickup. "Just for a week. I need time." At first, I didn't understand the tone. I looked up, half smiling. Time? Time for what? She didn't blink. Just sipped her orange juice like it was a cocktail at some beach resort. To think. To feel normal again. I pushed back my chair slowly. Normal how, Lana? You live in a house you decorated. Drive the car you picked. You've got yoga, brunches, Netflix, and a husband who never missed a birthday. What part of this doesn't feel normal? That's when her eyes narrowed, cold and quiet. You're too steady. You never change. I can't breathe in this life anymore, Derek. My voice caught in my throat. So you're leaving, because I'm consistent? She shrugged. It's not about you, really. I just need space. You block my number and call it space? I'll unblock you next week. Maybe. She reached for her bag, already packed, like she'd been waiting for this moment. I stepped in front of the door, heat rising in my chest. You're walking out and leaving me to just sit here and wonder? I'm not asking your permission. The front door creaked as she pulled it open. My voice cracked, not with tears, but something sharper. Then don't come back. She froze for a beat. Not long, but enough. Then the door slammed behind her, the sound cutting through the silence like an axe. The room stilled. That silence, it wasn't peace. It was pressure, like all the air had been sucked out. My legs stayed locked, hands clenched at my sides. I didn't follow her down the walkway. I just stood there. My wife had walked out with the ease of tossing out trash, and I was still standing in my slippers, breathing hard like I'd run a mile. I stayed in that spot for longer than I want to admit. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock on the wall, the distant sound of a lawn mower down the street. It was a beautiful morning, really, but everything inside me. Thunderclouds. I was 43, a civil engineer. 2 decades of building other people's dreams while quietly funding my wife's whims. Lana loved designer candles, Pilates, and Sunday gossip with women who smiled through gritted teeth. I never complained. I made sure the mortgage was paid. Took care of her parents when they got sick. We weren't flashy, but I thought we were stable. And maybe that's what made me blind. I never saw her contempt growing behind her casual smiles. And now this? This was her first honest sentence in months. The door was still vibrating in its frame. The next evening, I found myself nursing a beer at O'Bannon's, a low-ceilinged sports bar tucked between a hardware store and a tax office in our little Colorado suburb. It was the kind of place that still smelled like smoke even though smoking had been banned 10 years ago. The TVs flickered with a college football game no one was really watching, and the lights were dim enough that you didn't have to explain the look on your face. Matt slid onto the stool beside me with a half nod. "You look like a guy who's been asked to hold a grenade." I gave a dry chuckle, not looking up. Something like that. Matt was my oldest friend, since 7th grade. He'd been best man at my wedding, godfather to my niece, and the only person who never needed me to sugarcoat a single sentence. Which was probably why I hadn't told him anything until tonight. "She left," I finally said, staring into the foam of my beer. "Packed a bag. Walked out yesterday morning." Matt paused mid-sip. "Left like left? Or left like a coffee break?" She said she needed a week to clear her head. "That's not a coffee break, man. That's a warning shot." I rubbed the back of my neck. "Come on, Matt. Maybe she just needs some air. I've been the same for a long time. I work. I mow the lawn. I don't surprise her with trips to Napa or midnight dances in the kitchen." He snorted. "So now being a decent guy is a flaw?" I exhaled slowly. Maybe she's just bored. Maybe she needed to miss me. Matt's voice cut in sharp. No, Derek. She blocked your number." I looked over at him, startled by the edge in his tone. He leaned in, his voice low but firm. "You don't block someone's number unless you're doing something you don't want them to know about." The sentence hit harder than I expected. I shifted on my stool, trying to keep my face neutral. "You think she's cheating?" "I think she's acting like someone who already made a decision and didn't care to include you in it." I looked back down at my glass. "She said it's just a week." Matt shook his head, frustrated. "Derek, listen to me. You're trying to be the good guy here. I get it. But this This isn't normal. Marriage isn't about temporary exits. You don't get to walk out like a ghost and leave your partner guessing. I stayed quiet, chewing on the rim of my beer glass. He softened then. I could hear it in his voice. I'm not saying go burn the house down. I'm just saying, don't gaslight yourself into thinking this is okay. There was a long silence between us. The kind that only exists between men who've known each other long enough not to need filler words. Then Matt pulled out his wallet and slapped a few bills on the counter. I'm not trying to kick you while you're down, man, he said quietly. I just don't want to see you take the blame for someone else's disrespect. He stood, pulling on his jacket. You want to talk more? I'm around. But don't let her rewrite the rules just because she's bored. With that, he gave my shoulder a squeeze and walked out into the cold. I sat there another hour, finishing my beer and replaying his words over and over. Was I trying too hard to believe the best in Lana? Because the alternative would unravel everything? Was I clinging to the version of her I married and ignoring the one she'd become? The bar crowd was thinning. Somewhere, a buzzer rang and a game ended. I stared at my reflection in the glass behind the bar. Matt was right about one thing. Marriage doesn't work like this. And something about Lana's eyes that morning, the calm in them, that wasn't someone unsure of herself. That was someone who'd already crossed a line. I didn't want to believe it. But denial doesn't make a fire stop burning. The call came just after 9. I was half watching a documentary, half convincing myself not to text Lana. The living room was quiet, too quiet. The kind where every creak in the floorboards sounds like it might be regret coming to sit beside you. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Matt, you need to come downtown. Right now? I'll explain when you get here. I didn't ask questions. His voice was clipped, urgent, and something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be something I could just scroll past or sleep off. By the time I pulled into the parking garage next to the restaurant he'd named, I could already see his black SUV parked near the edge of the lot, facing the main windows of the candlelit dining room. I climbed in, closed the passenger door, and barely got a breath out before Matt muttered, "Look through the far window. Booth by the wall." I followed his gaze, and there she was. Lana, hairstyled, red lipstick I hadn't seen in months, the blue dress I bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she said was too dressy for casual dinner. But here she was, wearing it like a badge of liberation. Across from her sat a man in a tailored navy suit. Tall, clean-shaven, a smile too wide to be innocent. They weren't just talking, they were laughing. Her hand brushed his wrist once, and he didn't flinch like a colleague would. He leaned in like he'd done it before. For a second, I couldn't feel my hands. My breath came shallow and quick. I reached for the door handle without thinking. Matt caught my sleeve in a firm grip. "Don't," he said. His voice wasn't raised, but the weight behind it stopped me. I stared at him. "You knew she'd be here?" He nodded slowly. "My cousin saw them last week. Same guy, same vibe. I had to be sure before I told you anything." She said she needed a break. I muttered, my knuckles turning white. Matt glanced back toward the restaurant. She took one, straight into someone else's booth. Rage coiled inside me like a spring. "Let me go in," I said. "She wants space? Fine. But she doesn't get to pretend I don't exist while she's playing dress-up with this clown." Matt tightened his grip. "You go in there swinging, and she wins." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "She'll spin it. Say you embarrassed her, acted unstable. Suddenly you're the angry husband she had to leave. That's the story she'll tell everyone." I let that sink in. He wasn't wrong. That's exactly the kind of play she'd run. Innocent until inconvenient. Then you're the problem. The warmth of the SUV felt suffocating. I cracked the window slightly, letting in the chill of downtown December. "I want to break something," I said, my voice shaking. Matt looked at me and said, quietly, "So break the pattern instead." I stared at the flickering candles inside the restaurant. At the way Lana leaned back in her seat like she didn't have a husband at home whose world had just cracked wide open. And then I did something I didn't expect. I stayed seated. Didn't storm in. Didn't cause a scene. Just sat there in silence, letting the weight of what I saw harden into something deeper than rage. Clarity. She hadn't just walked out. She'd moved on. The SUV felt smaller by the second. Matt hadn't said anything since pulling me back from the door, but I could feel him watching me, waiting to see which version of myself I'd choose next. The silent one, the broken one, or the one ready to crack glass with his fists. But something in my chest refused to stay still. I can't just sit here and watch her laugh in my face, I muttered, pushing open the door before Matt could stop me again. I'm not breaking furniture. I just want her to see me. That's it. Derek. But I was already out. The restaurant was warm, golden, the kind of glow people associated with anniversaries and second chances. The second I walked in, I saw her, booth by the wall. Her back was to me, and she was still laughing. That laugh used to be mine. Her companion had his hand resting on the table, dangerously close to hers. He was mid-story, from the look of it, gesturing with a polished charm like he'd done this routine a dozen times before. Maybe more. I walked straight toward them, every step cutting through the hum of conversation like a ripple across still water. Lana glanced up at the waiter, then she saw me. Her smile faltered mid-sentence. I stopped at the edge of the table, didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Her face told me everything. Derek, her voice dropped to a whisper. This isn't what you think. I let my eyes flick between the two of them. The man, early 40s, expensive watch, every hair in place, froze like a deer about to be introduced to a windshield. He didn't speak, didn't nod. He just stood up with sudden urgency, grabbed his coat, and disappeared out the side exit like he was escaping a fire. Lana watched him go, then turned back to me with flushed cheeks and wide eyes. I was going to tell you. I raised an eyebrow. Tell me what exactly? She stammered. He's just someone I used to know. I ran into him, and we thought dinner would help you think. I said quietly, this the kind of clarity you were after when you walked out? She looked around nervously, as if the linen tablecloths might come to her defense. You're making a scene. I shook my head. Not yet. A moment passed. Her shoulders slumped like she expected yelling, tears, accusations. But I gave her none of that. I turned around and walked away. No explanation. No insults. Just walked. My shoes echoed against the polished floor. No one stopped me. No one said a word. The air felt heavier with each step, but my spine stayed straight. Outside, the cold hit my face like a slap. I got back into my car, gripping the steering wheel hard enough that my fingers ached. Matt didn't say anything. He didn't have to. She saw you, he said after a moment. Yeah, I replied, staring straight ahead. That's all I wanted. And we drove home in silence. No music. No headlights behind us. Just the sound of the road and the slow, heavy unraveling of a lie I'd been living in far too long. It was exactly 34 minutes after I'd gotten home that I heard the familiar screech of tires outside. Then, her keys fumbling at the lock. The door flung open, and Lana burst in like a gust of chaos. Derek, she cried out, her voice cracking already. Please wait. She slammed the door shut behind her and stood there panting, mascara streaked down her face, one heel missing, the strap of her bag sliding off her shoulder. I was still in the same chair I'd sat in when I came back. No TV, no phone, just silence and a fireplace that hadn't been lit in days. I need to explain, she said, rushing into the room, voice trembling. That dinner, it didn't mean anything. I swear, Derek. You caught it out of context. I didn't move. She kept going, each sentence tumbling out faster than the last. I was going to tell you. He messaged me a few days ago, and I didn't think it would matter. I needed space, and I didn't know what I wanted, and, God, please say something. I stood up slowly, not because I wanted to intimidate her, but because I was tired of being talked at. I saw you laughing, I said calmly. She blinked, confused. What? At the table. With him. Laughing. You don't do that with someone you're confused about. You looked sure. She stepped forward. It was nerves. It was awkward. I didn't know how else to act. Lana, I said, cutting her off quietly. You wore the blue dress. She froze. My voice stayed steady. You told me once it made you feel like a woman who's wanted. You remember that? She nodded, slowly. You wore that dress tonight. And you blocked my number this week. So tell me again how this was just some innocent reconnection? Her voice dropped to a whisper. It was just dinner. I looked at her, really looked. Hair slightly frizzed from rushing, the corners of her mouth trembling. But behind all that, there was no innocence. Only desperation. I walked to the front door and opened it. Derek, her voice broke. You should go. No, you don't understand. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't plan this. Her breath hitched. I was lonely, and you've been so quiet lately. You stopped noticing things. I thought maybe you didn't care anymore. I turned around. So your answer to that was to find someone else to notice you? She took a step forward, tears falling freely now. I made a mistake. A stupid, thoughtless mistake. But you and me, we've built a life. You can't just throw that away. I didn't shout. I didn't slam the door. I just stepped aside and pointed toward the open threshold. I'm not throwing anything away, I said softly. I'm letting go of something that's already broken. She stood there, trembling. Please, she whispered, like a final note. But I didn't answer. She finally moved past me, shoulders shaking, one heel in hand now, and paused on the porch like she wanted to turn back, say something that would rewrite the last 5 days. But there was nothing left to say. I closed the door behind her, the soft click of the lock sounding more like a truth than an ending. I stood there for a long moment, the cold air from the outside still clinging to the frame. The house felt quieter. Not peaceful, but real, honest. I walked back to the living room. The silence followed. And for the first time since Lana left, I didn't feel like chasing anything. It was barely 9 a.m. when I heard the knock. Not frantic, not aggressive, just soft, rehearsed. I stood in the hallway for a moment, still in the t-shirt and joggers I'd slept in, if you could call it sleep. I already knew who it was before I opened the door. And sure enough, there she stood. Lana, hair pulled into a low bun. No makeup this time. A small suitcase by her side. The same one she'd left with 5 days ago. Her expression was cautious, like someone approaching a house that might be on fire. Hey, she said gently, folding her arms against the chill. Can we talk? I didn't say anything right away, just studied her. Her voice was softer than last night. No tears, no rage. Just that worn-down, quiet kind of apology you only hear when someone realizes they've run out of ways to spin the story. I didn't sleep, she added, eyes flicking toward the house behind me. I kept thinking. About us. This place. Everything we built. I stayed silent, not moving from the doorway. I know I messed up, she continued. But I want to come home, Derek. I want to fix it. I brought my things. I thought maybe we could. No. That one word came out steadier than I expected. Her lips parted, stunned. What? You don't live here anymore. But it's me. I'm your wife. You were. She stepped closer. You're not even going to let me try? I looked at her directly. You made your choice, Lana. You walked out. You shut me out. You didn't leave room for questions, and you sure didn't leave room for respect. But I came back. No, I said. You came back because you lost control. Not because you were ready to own what you did. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She wasn't used to me like this. Not calm. Not cold. Just resolute. You said it was just a week, I added. But we both know it was never about time. It was about permission. You wanted to test the water and still keep your spot by the fire. I'm not that man anymore. Tears welled in her eyes again, but she blinked them back. So that's it. Years together, and I'm just a stranger now? I didn't flinch. No. You're someone who taught me what I'll never tolerate again. She stood motionless, fingers tightening around the handle of her suitcase. There was a pause, long, heavy, and then I watched it happen, something shift behind her eyes. The realization that the man standing in front of her wasn't the one she thought she could bend back into place. I saw it in the way her breath caught, the way her shoulders lowered, like the fight had finally drained out of her. You look different, she whispered. Harder. No, I said. Just clearer. She nodded slowly, stepped back, and picked up her bag. I didn't watch her walk down the steps. I didn't wait to see if she turned around. I closed the door. This time, it felt final. And the silence that followed wasn't cold like before. It felt earned. Real quick, hit the like button to boost the story. It was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I heard the knock again. But this time, it wasn't soft. It was the kind of knock a friend uses when they're not just visiting, they're delivering something. Matt stood on the porch, holding a phone in one hand, a look on his face that I'd never seen before. Not in all our years. You decent? He asked. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He walked straight to the living room, didn't sit. There's something you need to see, he said, unlocking his phone. I debated even showing you this, man. But I want to know if I were you. He held out the phone, screen facing me. The video was a little shaky, clearly taken from behind a partition or through a window. It looked like the back garden of a high-end spa. One of those luxury places with massage huts and eucalyptus steam. Lana was easy to spot. Her posture, her voice, even the way she tilted her head when she laughed. She was sitting on a lounge chair in a robe, holding a glass of cucumber water. And next to her, the same man from the restaurant. Except this time, there was no confusion. No mistaking the body language. They were close. Intimate. His hand slid over hers. And then, he kissed her. Not quick. Not accidental. Long, familiar. Like it wasn't the first time. I watched the entire 10-second clip without blinking. No sound. Just silence pressing against my ears as the scene played out. When it ended, I handed the phone back. My hands were still, but my jaw, clenched tight enough to hurt. Matt's voice was cautious. My cousin works front desk there. She recognized Lana when I showed her a picture last week. Sent me this today, said she didn't want to get involved, but she also didn't want me walking around blind. I nodded slowly. Matt watched me, waiting. You okay? He asked. I stood up, grabbed my wallet and keys off the counter, and walked toward the door. Derek. I paused only to slip on my coat. I need to go. Where? Lawyer, I said. Matt followed me to the porch. Look, I know this hurts. But don't rush into anything. You've been calm this whole time. Don't flip that now. I turned to him, finally meeting his eyes. I'm not flipping, I said. I'm just finished. His face shifted then, not into worry, but understanding. He gave a small nod and stepped back. I got into the truck and pulled away from the curb. The video still burned into my mind, frame by frame. The spa, the robe, the way she tilted her chin toward him like it was muscle memory. She hadn't just betrayed me with emotion. She'd planned it. She'd invested in it. Lied through tears about just needing air, while letting another man breathe down her neck. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't even replay old memories. I just drove. The lawyer's office was downtown, tucked between a dental clinic and a real estate brokerage. The parking lot was half empty. The sign on the door said, Family Law, Carter, Moore and Brooks. I walked in and told the receptionist I needed to file for divorce. She didn't blink. Name? Derek Wallace. She handed me a clipboard. As I sat down to fill out the paperwork, pen in hand, something in my chest finally shifted. Not heavy, not hollow, solid, like a door had been shut from the inside and locked. I wasn't playing fair anymore. I was playing real. For days past, I didn't hear from her, not after the spa video, not after I'd left for the lawyer. Nothing but silence, which was ironic considering how loudly she used to need to be heard. Then, on the morning of what would have been our 7th anniversary, my phone buzzed. Lana, dinner at Brio tonight at 7. I made the reservation just in case you wanted to talk. Still our date, after all. She even added a little champagne emoji, like that softened the blow of everything that came before. I stared at the message for a long minute. Then I locked my phone and tossed it face down on the counter. That night, the backyard was glowing. String lights were draped across the fence. The grill was fired up, beers were clinking. Someone brought a speaker and let classic rock take over the air. The air smelled like burgers and cold weather. The laughter was real, not forced, not polite. Just real. Matt stood near the fire pit with a spatula in one hand and a drink in the other. You sure you don't want to do something quieter tonight? He asked, nudging me. I took a sip of my drink. Quieter was killing me. He grinned. Fair enough. More friends showed up than I expected, some from work, some from the gym, even my neighbor Greg with his awkward jokes, and 2 kinds of dip. People I hadn't seen in months, showing up without hesitation. Maybe they didn't know everything, but they knew enough to understand this wasn't a house in mourning. It was a house reclaiming itself. At exactly 7:04 p.m. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. Caller ID, Lana. I stepped away from the noise, out onto the darker edge of the yard where the lights didn't quite reach. I didn't hesitate. Hello. There was soft piano music in the background, clinking silverware. The unmistakable hush of a white tablecloth restaurant. Where are you? She asked, voice light but unsure. I smiled. Just enough to feel it, not enough for her to hear it. I'm already celebrating, I said. A pause. Celebrating what? I let the words land slow and clean. My bachelorhood. Silence. Not even a breath. Then, click. She hung up. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, turned toward the house, and saw everyone still gathered around the fire pit, plates in hand, laughter rising again. I walked back to join them, sliding into a seat next to Matt. She call? He asked, handing me another drink. Yep. How'd it go? I clinked his glass with mine. Short. The rest of the night rolled on without a hitch. Someone spilled salsa. Greg tried to play guitar. Nina from work showed up late with cookies and a story about her dog eating her phone charger. No one mentioned Lana. No one had to. This wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't even about what she did. It was about what I'd stopped allowing. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone to come home. I already was. The party was in full swing. Laughter bubbled across the backyard, flames flickered in the fire pit, and I was halfway through a story about Matt nearly burning down his garage trying to deep fry a turkey when the front gate creaked open. Heads turned. She walked in like a storm, pretending to be a breeze. Lana, wearing the same coat I'd bought her last Christmas. Hair perfect. Face tight. Her eyes scanned the yard, found me instantly. The conversations dipped just enough for everyone to notice something had shifted. She stepped forward, heels crunching against the gravel. Really? She snapped. You throw a party on our anniversary and don't even have the decency to answer my call. I didn't stand. Didn't flinch. You called, I said calmly. I answered. That wasn't an answer, she shot back, voice rising. That was a slap in the face. A few of the guests looked away politely. Others didn't bother. Matt stood beside me, jaw tight. He leaned in. You want me to get her out? I shook my head. No. She wants the spotlight. She can have it. Lana took a few more steps forward, her words coming faster now. This is what you do? You humiliate me in front of your friends like some kind of revenge stunt? Throw a party to pretend like none of this happened? Like I never mattered? I stood slowly, letting the full silence of the yard settle between us. You want truth? I said. All right. I turned to the patio sliding door and walked inside, everyone watching. A moment later, I came back with the TV remote in one hand and Matt's phone in the other. Everyone, I need your attention for a second, I said. Conversations quieted. Plates lowered. Some guests were confused. Others, not surprised. I pointed the phone at the screen. A few clicks later, the spa video began to play. 10 seconds. No sound. Just Lana. Laughing. Touching his hand. The kiss. The screen went black. The yard stayed silent. Lana's face drained of color. Where did you get that? She whispered, frozen. My friend's cousin, I replied. She works there. You remember her, right? The one you called nosy with a bad manicure. Guess she noticed more than you thought. Lana took a shaky step backward, hands to her mouth. Derek, it wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything, I swear. No, I said. You don't get to talk now. She dropped to her knees, right there in the grass, mascara starting to run. Her voice cracked in front of everyone. Please, don't do this. I made a mistake. I was confused. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. I thought you didn't care. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I didn't kneel. I didn't comfort her. I just spoke clearly. The lawyers are already working on the divorce. She gasped like I'd struck her. Derek, no. No, please. We can fix this. You don't have to ruin me in front of everyone. You did that part yourself, I said quietly. She sobbed, but I turned back toward the fire pit, where Matt handed me my drink like nothing had just exploded. Sorry about the interruption, folks, I said with a half smile. S'mores are still up for grabs. People shifted awkwardly at first. Then one or two offered a hand on my shoulder. Someone started music again. A few guests walked away from Lana as if they didn't know where to stand. Matt leaned in beside me. You sure that wasn't too much? I exhaled. It was just enough. Behind us, Lana stayed crumpled in the grass, a woman who finally realized the mask she wore had cracked in public. And this time, there was no covering it back up. By the time the last guest trickled out, the fire pit had turned to glowing embers, and the night air settled into a calm hush. Plates were stacked, music faded, and the echoes of laughter still lingered like a soft aftertaste. I was standing in the kitchen, rinsing off the last tray of Esmore sticks, when I heard footsteps behind me. Hey, said a voice gently. You missed a few cups on the patio. I turned to find Nina holding a small stack of red cups and a half-empty wine bottle. She was in a loose sweatshirt and sneakers now, her hair pulled back, face relaxed, far from the work version of herself I usually saw at the office. We'd known each other for years. Never anything more than colleagues who became friends over mutual sarcasm and a shared preference for quiet mornings. You didn't have to stay this long, I said, drying my hands. She gave a small shrug. You hosted. Least I could do is help clean up after your public trial. I cracked a smile. You caught that, huh? I think the whole neighborhood did. I leaned against the counter, eyeing the wine in her hand. She lifted it slightly. No judgment if I pour a little. Only if you pour me one too. A few moments later, we were sitting at the kitchen island, 2 glasses between us and the soft tick of the wall clock filling the silence. I meant to tell you, she said, swirling her glass gently. I've been there. I looked at her. What do you mean? The whole betrayal thing. 2 years ago. My ex, David. You never met him. What happened? She took a sip before answering. He had this whole second life I didn't know about. Not another woman. A whole apartment. I found the lease in his glove box. Said it was his thinking space. Turns out, it was where he went to be someone else. I winced. That's brutal. I thought so too, she said quietly. Until I realized I wasn't just mourning the relationship. I was mourning who I thought I was in it. I nodded slowly, letting her words settle. She looked up at me then, her voice a little softer. You looked lighter tonight. After everything. I thought about it. I think it's because I finally stopped waiting for an apology that was never going to come. Once I let go of that, everything else just fell into place. She smiled faintly, eyes warm. I don't know if I believe in clean slates, she said, but I do believe in real ones. We sat in a comfortable silence for a beat. No need to fill it with noise. Just 2 people who'd been bruised the same way, finding a little quiet on the other side of the wreckage. Eventually, she stood, empty glass in hand. I should go? But hey, next time you host a party, maybe just cupcakes. Less emotional warfare. I chuckled. Deal. She paused at the door. You did good tonight, Derek. Really? And then she was gone. I locked the door behind her, turned off the lights, and stood in the kitchen a while longer. It felt warmer. Not because of the wine. Not even because of Nina. But because, for once, there was nothing left to hide. Just honesty. And the slow, quiet return of peace. The next morning, I got to Ridgeview Cafe a few minutes early. Our usual spot, small, tucked behind a bookstore, and always smelling like cinnamon and second chances. Matt walked in right on time, baseball cap low, hoodie zipped. No grand entrance. Just a man who'd shown up through it all. He slid into the booth across from me, nodded once. You look like a guy who just got 10 pounds off his back, he said, reaching for the menu he never read. 15 maybe, I replied. The waitress, Kelly, same as always, brought us 2 coffees without needing to ask. I took a sip, then looked across the table. Listen, I said, about the night at the bar. I didn't want to hear it. And I acted like you were the problem when really, you were the only person being honest. Matt waved a hand. Water under the bridge. No, really. I should have said it before. Thank you. For not walking away. Even when I was doing everything I could to make it easy. He leaned back, cradling his mug. That's what friends do, man. We show up when it counts. Not just when things are good. I looked out the window for a moment. The snow was just starting to fall. Light, clean. No mess yet. Just the beginning of something new. You were right, I said, voice lower now. She wasn't confused. She was already gone. I just didn't want to admit it. Matt nodded. Sometimes the truth isn't a mirror, it's a sledgehammer. But once it hits, at least you're finally building on solid ground. We sat in silence for a moment, sipping our coffee, the air between us steady. I gave a small laugh. You think it's crazy that I feel better now? After everything? Matt smirked. Not crazy, just free. We clinked our mugs together. A small sound, but it meant something. 2 men, changed by the storm, still standing. And ready, finally, for what comes next. That was the end of my story. I still think about Matt, how he stepped in when I refused to see what was right in front of me. He didn't know me that, but he showed up anyway. If you were in his place, would you have stayed quiet or risked the friendship to tell the truth? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit something real for you, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more to come.